Good morning, everyone. How many of you measure the work of your teams in order to detect opportunities for improvement? Where's the hand? Okay, so my name is Erez Morabia, and today we're after the session named Don't Miss Your Opportunity for Improvement. And we'll talk today about how opportunities for improvement are really generated by the data we measure. And how the data we measure is really reflected from the how and what the teams are really working on. And if we change the way we measure on the team level, it can open up a new set of opportunities for us. I'm Erez Morabia. I'm an R&D director at Rapyd. I'm also an Agile coach and consulting and escorting teams in the last few years. Now, while I was escorting all those teams along the few years, I was tackling in the same challenge over and over and over again. And it was about that the teams were limiting their opportunities for improvement by measuring their overall work. They were limiting their opportunities for improvement by measuring the overall work. Now, I know it seems odd, but once we change that concept, a new set of opportunities open up for us. Okay, it helped for my teams, it helped for the teams that I've escorted, and hopefully it will help for your teams as well. So let's just get started. Let's look on a typical implementation in an Agile organization. Okay, you start from the team level. You implement either Scrum or Kanban, a combination of the two, right? And then you go to the scaled-up framework, either your own methodology or one of the official frameworks out there, LESS, Nexus, DEAD, SAFe, Scrum at Scale, whatever. You put in metrics and KPIs into those frameworks. You build nice management dashboards, and then you take management decisions upon them. Typical implementation. Now, what happens when you implement Agile on the team level? You start seeing problems. So Ken Schwaber, co-author of Scrum, once said, Scrum is like your mother-in-law. It points out all your faults. And this is what you're starting to see, right? And then you say, OK, I have the problems. I want to improve. I want to base my decisions based on data. Why on data? Because data is the way to go. Data shows you where you are. And if you're implementing a new practice, data will show you whether you improved and how much you improved. Now, my statement here is that it's not about how you measure, it's about what you measure. It's not about how you measure, it's about what you measure. And what do I mean by that? So when I'm talking about how, it's about story points versus time. It's about relative sizing versus absolute sizing. Okay? Because teams are so stressed about not having the pure story points methodology in hand, and they always apologize, I'm sorry, but in my organization, 1 story point equals 1 person day. And there's a misbelief that if I'll implement user stories or story points, in a pure way, that will solve all my problems. But it's not. I think it's much more important to understand which activities do you measure. And let's see what kind of things we usually measure. So this guy on the left hand of the screen is Frederick Winslow Taylor, the father of scientific management from the Industrial Revolution era. This guy made tremendous improvement in the industrial engineering world. What he basically said is there's direct correlation between delivery and how busy our workers are. There is direct correlation between delivery and how much we utilize our workers. Although this might be true in the Industrial Revolution days, it is not true in the software engineering today. Okay? And there are a lot of proof to that. One of the famous models is the Sinefan model that takes our world and split it into 4 domains: simple, complicated, complex, and chaotic. Now, I won't get into details what it really means, but what is important here is that the industrial engineering resides on the complicated side, while the software engineering resides on the complex side. And therefore, we should be very, very careful from taking practices from the industrial engineering into the software engineering. And one of those practices is about the direct correlation. In the software engineering, there is no direct correlation between delivery and workers' utilization on how busy our workers are. Now, if I was Taylor, how many of you watched the FIFA World Cup lately? Okay. How many of you know Lionel Messi? Okay. So if I was Frederick Winslow Taylor and looking at Messi, I would consider him as an average worker. He's pretty lazy on the field. I don't know if you noticed that, but he's pretty lazy on the field. But Messi delivers. Okay, we need to keep our eyes on the ball, not on how busy the players are. So if we agree that we need to measure delivery versus the overall work, let's see what it really means. Okay, let's see what it really means, the difference between the two. So I took you just 7 categories for an example. Okay, we took product stories, internal R&D tasks, bugs, lab maintenance, and other activities that are release-related, like regression testing and any other release activities that's out there, vacation days, and unexpected production incidents. And meetings in general. It's Scrum meetings, HR meetings, any kind of meeting we have in the organization. Now, what I'm usually doing when I'm taking those on the overall work measurement, I'm just measuring everything. I measure the 4 top items. For meetings and unexpected production incidents, I just buffer them. And for vacation days, I just do ask and calc. How many days are you going to take in this sprint? How many days she's going to take in this sprint? And I'm putting that into a nice formula. I'm just taking the number of people multiplied by the number of days I have in this sprint. That includes the overall work plus the buffers I took plus the vacation days, right? When I get a bit more sophisticated and advanced in my approach, I'm going to a velocity-based approach, which is the yesterday weather approach. Just looking at the last 3 sprints, look at the actual completed work, and based on that, I took my calculation. Again, 4 first categories are inside. This is what I'm looking on. Now let's look what happens on the delivery-oriented approach. How many of you consider bugs as delivery? Be brave. How many of you estimate bugs? My view on delivery, I count nothing but the first 2. That's it. Why? Because I really want us to be focused on the stakeholders' requirements. This is what matters. And let's see how powerful delivery-oriented measurement is versus the overall work. This is a velocity chart. Most of you might know it. Let's go over it briefly. So for each sprint, we have 2 histograms. We have the gray histogram, which shows the expected work we want to do, and we have the green histogram, which is the actual completed work. Now, each one of the histograms is actually built of 2 portions. The delivery-oriented items, which is the product story points and the R&D tasks, and the other work we listed out there, like bugs, release activities, and so on and so forth. Now, when we get a product or a backlog from our stakeholders, that backlog contains only delivery items. Suppose it contains 100 days of work. Now, someone comes to me and says, how fast are we going to finish that backlog? I'm trying to go to my velocity. Suppose my velocity is 20 work days a sprint, but I can't really do 100 divided by 20 because my velocity contains much more than just delivery. Okay, so there is no direct correlation between my backlog and my velocity. It's not a trivial planning. However, if only I measure delivery, it's straightforward. I'm just taking the backlog, divided by my velocity, and I have the answer. Okay, this is one aspect. The other aspect is about visibility. Now, before I drill down into visibility, how important visibility is in the software engineering domain. So back then in the industrial engineering domain, visibility was just going to the pipeline, you are seeing the physical materials go by. But in the software engineering, everything is virtual. This is why Scrum boards and Kanban boards are so powerful. They visualize the virtual stuff, and then we can take decisions upon it. So let's look about velocity and our power of visibility in that aspect. And suppose I've added here the red dotted line, which shows the total number of days in the sprint. Suppose we have 5 people for 10 days, total of 50 days in the sprint. Okay? Again, every histogram is built out of few portions. We have, on the expected side, we have the delivery and the overall work. In the actual completed work, we have the delivery, the overall work, and the unplanned work that came into the sprint. okay, any release activities or bugs that I'm estimating. And what I'm really trying to do, I'm trying to maximize that, and my goal is to hit the 50 days, right? What a pleasure it is to see 50 days after 50 days being on the screen. This is what Taylor would tell us to do. But you know what? I don't know. I don't need any graph to tell me that the person is working 10 days after 10 days. It's meaningless in the software engineering domain. There is no correlation between how hard they work and what the delivery is. There is no correlation between their utilization and delivery. But when I'm going to a delivery-oriented graph, this is where I see the problem. This is where I see how low my delivery is. This is where I see the huge gap between the expected delivery and the actual delivery. And I want you to see that in your teams. Because once you see that, then you start to recover. Now, the next question that comes along, okay, suppose I convince you you're going to a delivery-oriented approach. Now tell me, but Erez, how can we plan without really estimating bugs or release activities or any other activities that are out there? So let's tackle the bugs first. Let's look at a typical sprint. We have the velocity of a sprint, and then we need to watch on the defects trend to see how many open bugs we have at any given time. And suppose our defect trend goes up. It's increasing. It means we need to invest more in quality. And it's not about how many days we are going to invest in bugs or how many bugs we are going to solve. It's about the defect trend. This is what matters. This is the outcome. So in the next sprint, I'll take less content. I will commit to less content in order to handle more bugs. And this is what I'm doing. I'm taking less content, and then I should see a decreasing trend in my graph. Okay? In the next sprint, I can be a bit more brave, take more content, and see how it reflects on the defect trend. Same goes to the sprint after. So it's about keeping your eyes both on your velocity and on the defect trend. Okay, you need to balance those two. It's not about how many days you're going to invest in bugs or how many bugs you're going to solve. It doesn't matter. Just balance those two. So without estimating any bugs, we solve that problem of planning, at least. Let's move to the second problem of all the meetings and the release activities that we don't take under account in the delivery-oriented approach. In that aspect, it's really straightforward. You look on the last 3 sprints, you're taking the completed work, the actual completed work, you take the average of that, and you use that in order to plan your next sprint. That's it. All the release activities, all the bugs, all the unexpected production incidents, everything was already counted in this velocity because it happened in the last 3 sprints as well. And if it happened in the last 3 sprints and this is the actual completed work, it will work for you again. So just base your decision upon it. It's implicitly inside the formula already. Now people would come and say, but what if I have an holiday, an unexpected holiday in the coming sprint? Okay, use your common sense. If there's an holiday taking out of the sprint, commit for half the velocity. It's not a big deal. You don't need to really calculate everything or build some Excel files or jargons out of it. So we are done. Bugs, meetings, release activity, we can do it all in a delivery-oriented approach. Now let's look again on this graph. Let's go again to that graph. Suppose I have this team. And suppose I'm measuring the team only by delivery. And this is my total days in the sprint. And what I want to do really here is I want to maximize my delivery. Not the utilization of the workers, but the delivery. So suppose I have this A team. They are like fearless. They never sick. They don't take vacation days. They code without bugs. There's no production incidents. They work 25 hours out of 24 hours. They're amazing. And they are managing to do 50 days out of 50 days of delivery. And they keep improving. But I can't see that anymore in the graphs. Why is that? They're such a high-performing team, but I can't detect any improvement. I'm blind. The visibility is gone. Because you can't really do more than 50 days in 50 days. You hit the time limit. This is where time backfires. Okay? This is where you need to switch to story points. Okay, so let me tell you a story about story points. It's about strawberries. So my colleague Vijay Bawalwani told me this story 3-4 years ago, and since then, I'm telling this story to other people that I'm trying to explain about story points. So story points are really like strawberries. When you go to the fruit market and you go to the strawberry seller, you don't ask him how many hours of strawberries have you sold, because the answer will always be the same. It will be 8 hours. And if you go to the next guy and ask him how many hours of strawberries have you sold, it will be again 8 hours. What you're really asking is how many kilograms of strawberries have you sold. And it can be 10 kilograms, and the other day 20, 100, 1 million of kilograms. There is no limit to the amount of strawberries you can sell within a given time with a given time frame. Okay? And when we switch to story points, you can see the improvement of those high-performing teams. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of advantages to story points besides that, but in that context, it's very important to understand that story points are really powerful when you hit the time limit. Now, let's recap everything. We started with this guy, Frederick Winslow Taylor, the father of scientific management from the Industrial Revolution days. He told us delivery is directly correlated with how busy our workers are. So we're trying to utilize that and try to make them busier. It works to some extent, but sooner than later, I want you to move to a delivery-oriented approach. Keep your eyes on the ball, see the problem, face the challenge, and start improving your delivery. Once you improve that and you get to the time limit, this is where you switch to story points. And then you keep improving. I don't have anything against story points. Actually, I love them. But I don't want you to get stuck in a way that you measure the overall work with story points. You will miss big opportunities for improvement. If there is one sentence I want you to remember out of this presentation, it's that it's not about how you measure, it's about what you measure. Don't utilize like Taylor, deliver like Messi. Thank you.